The Rising of the Shield Hero is the worst anime of 2019. It's almost unbelievable how many terrible, awful things got crammed into this story. But I'll try and do my best to tell you why it's so bad and why you shouldn't even bother watching it for yourself to determine whether it might be something that appeals to your specific sensibilities. After all, it's quite clear that this show is objectively bad and morally repugnant, and as such should be avoided at all costs. But what is it that makes it so devious and evil? Well, the short answer is literally everything, but the most obvious point is that this story, and by extension the author who wrote the light novel and everyone who worked on the anime adaptation, hates women. In the first episode, the main character, Naofumi, gets isekai'd into a fantasy world where he is seduced by a princess, only to have her turn around and falsely accuse him of raping her. The mere act of including this plot point is objectively misogynistic, as it paints all women in a bad light, rather than just this single character who's portraying an anomalistic personality even within the world she inhabits. As we all know, women in real life would never do something so heinous in an attempt to ruin someone's reputation or advance their own personal clout. You see, Nakatomi here is the pinnacle of male privilege and patriarchal dominance. He conveys the typical power fantasies you'd expect from a character of his ilk, as long as you ignore the fact that his life is significantly less appealing than most of the other characters in this genre, and that the person who accuses him of rape is one of the most powerful people in the entire country. His attitude and the sequence of events that happen to him in the first episode are eerily reminiscent of the man-baby incels that roam the internet, putting on the airs of a nice guy in the hopes of getting women to sleep with them. And much like Naruto here, they are prone to bouts of violent rage when they don't get what they want. I mean, just look at that new Joker movie. Much like Shield Hero, it was clearly designed with incels in mind, and not the large swaths of the general public who feel completely disconnected from the apathetic atmosphere of society at large and a total loss of identity within that society. And the only reason it didn't cause mass shooting sprees across the country is because those dirty incels were trying to trick us into thinking that this wasn't an extreme overreaction to the perceived effect of a single piece of media's influence on the society we live in. Shield Hero is also one of the most controversial animes of all time, putting the likes of Voltron and Sailor Moon to shame, because at one point Macarena decides to buy a slave, which makes him bad. Now, some of you might be tempted to rebuke this by saying things like context, and the main character owning a slave is the entire point because it shows how he's become so incredibly paranoid and insecure due to his trauma revolving around the princess that he literally has to shackle people to himself in order to feel secure, and that by actually interacting with good people he eventually becomes a better person himself over the course of the series. But I think you're overanalyzing this a bit. Slavery is bad, and therefore the main character is the worst person ever, as owning a slave is clearly the most horrifying thing that an anime protagonist has ever done. After all, anime has always had a plainly obvious black and white sense of morality that makes it very easy to distinguish between good characters and bad characters, and that muddying the line between the two only means that bad people can get away with more bad things. Even without the extremely problematic elements, Shield Hero is still a completely pointless and uninteresting piece of media simply because of the fact that it is another generic isekai. As we all know, literally everyone on the planet hates isekai at this point. And yet, these soulless corporations keep forcing talented animators and directors who want nothing to do with this genre and feel no significant investment in it whatsoever to continue churning out the same stories over and over again. I mean, I could kind of understand it if most isekai had their own unique flavors, tones, and thematic bases that they want to explore through such a broad and malleable topic, and if this subgenre was inherently beneficial to creativity so long as creators put in the work to make it happen, but that's clearly not the case. Every isekai is exactly like Sword Art Online, which itself is also definitely an isekai and hasn't been inappropriately labeled as such by an audience that doesn't fully understand the labels they apply to things. Fua Fua is just Kirito with even more angst, Raftalia is just another generic waifu that only exists as a trophy wife for the hero and definitely isn't fundamental to his development over the course of the story, and the entire plot is specifically designed to promote the power fantasy that the male character takes part in, so that the losers who watch these shows have something that makes them feel better about their own lives. And this is totally not an idea that can be applied to literally any piece of fictional media that's ever been created. Clearly, it's all the fault of the greedy corporations forcing isekai down our throats, and consuming these stories, whether you legitimately enjoy them or not, and whether or not the general consensus on isekai has taken on an extremely skewed perspective due to the ravings of a vocal minority, is tantamount to robbing the animators behind these projects of more worthwhile stories to adapt. In short, Shield Hero is literally the worst thing that has ever happened to the anime industry. It has factually caused more rape to happen, and you should all feel bad for liking it, because my opinion is the only one that matters, and you are all mindless sheep who need to be slaughtered and thrown into the wood chipper where you belong. Let me out! Fuck. Shit. What time is it? Alright. Home stretch. Special thanks to Jan Rogalski, Rourke Tanjoin, Christine Seibert, Call Me Catlord, Ryan Johnson, Jennifer Spencer, and all my other patrons for their generous support. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.